Oh, and that's what I can say about Connor Klein. I've picked up models from the street, models like 9s and 10s. Oh, I was going to tell you in the live stream, this girl in red, and she's wearing, it looks like a evening nightie. It's silk. I don't know if she was wearing a bra or not, but I don't think so. I mean, I can't remember now. I don't think so. And she was smoking hot, smoking. Okay, she really seemed like she was a serious lady looking for serious relationship and marriage, right? I remember talking about this, and I thought she was older than she was. I was very confident. I was just being really cool. I went in for the kiss, and we end up full-on French kissing, long French kisses in the restaurant. I said I was 42. As I recall, anyway, I said I took 10 years off, right? I said I'm 42. And she looks at me and she goes, oh. And I go, how old are you? She goes, 18. Why am I telling you this story? So I do feel a little bit like a dirty old man on that one, to be very honest with you, because I would not date somebody. I never went to Dnipro. We exchanged numbers. She kept inviting me. I thought about it hard. I was single, right? I don't know. Take from this real life story of mine what you will. You know, there's some lessons in that.
We now supposed to believe that this Ukrainian bride business owner, who's pushing 60, is now reminiscing on the golden days when he was a sprightly 52 and doing the street pickup / day game malarkey on Hreśćatyk, basically being a public nuisance. And he was seducing the 18-year-old 9s and 10s, the models of Ukraine. The equivalent of Miss Ukraine was just like so enthralled by his amazing natural game that they were making out with him within a couple of hours when he doesn't look like George Clooney. Really? I think the word around in these parts, because I'm here in Odessa, Mama, in Ukraine on the shores of the Black Sea, the word would be fantazor. Now Joe doesn't speak Russian or Ukrainian, so even after many, many years that he previously had here in Ukraine, but I think from English he'd probably be able to figure that out. And it's just part of what I would describe as the delusion of what's left of the Ukrainian bride business. And it's not just this Joe who is left, although there aren't too many others who have stayed in this business, but I've interacted with a few over the last few weeks in the comments of videos, and it is very interesting to hear why they believe what they believe and some of the myths that they've been propagating, in my opinion. So in today's video, I'm going to dive a bit more into the origins of the current delusions of the Ukrainian bride business and what's left of it. None of it's here actually in Ukraine, which is actually, in my opinion, part of the delusion. They just haven't been in this country for years. At this point, it's when I was pushing 2 years since the February 24, 2022 invasion. It is coming up to Christmas. It's December 2023. We're actually into the second half of it already. And they are not coming here. Obviously, so they have no on-the-ground experience that's not at least 2 years old. And basically, the situation has been transformed by Russia's extended invasion back in February 2022. So it's pretty much close to irrelevant, a lot of the experiences that these kind of guys would have had before here in Ukraine. And they're relying on what? Very spurious information sources for what's going on in the country itself as they sit there over on their sofas in Canada or somewhere in Western Europe, or they're, I don't know, in Latin America. Well, they're far away from here and on the ground actually know what's going on. So let me dive into it. I will be going into some of the possible reasons for why they're so deluded, in my opinion, and also maybe why it's part of the marketing strategy at the moment. It's very interesting if you really evaluate and analyze what's going on. Let's get into the video. Поехали! So just briefly, why I have such an incredulous reaction to Joe's stories of his amazing day game seduction skills. Does he have any idea how rare a 9 and 10 is? We're talking about less than 1% of women fall into that category. I have a separate video on that. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Up on a card above, down below in the description. And I've hung out and even made a social experiment video, was probably 4 or 5 years ago now, with one of the, I guess, most renowned day game experts. And he himself is tall, buff, good looking, and even he has to admit that it works maybe 3% of the time for him, and for his clients less than 1%. And in general, it's not the 9s and 10s. It's gonna be maybe 7 and 8s. And I've seen this guy legitimately date girls that he met through a day game, even though I'm a huge skeptic of it. I think it's low value overall, especially if you're going for the most beautiful women. And it's a huge investment of time. Plus, you become a public nuisance, like a beggar, panhandling for something that begins with P. That will probably get me censored on YouTube if I say it. So you probably filled in the blanks on that. So if these guys who are like in shape, tall, good looking, have a certain amount of charisma, and are, let's see, 15 to 20 years younger than Joe, who is no Brad Pitt. I met him in person. He was what, more or less out of shape, 52-year-old. And he thinks he is seducing the 18-year-old next top models of Ukraine with his shtick on the streets of Kiev on Khreshchatyk. Yeah, sure. If it's true, and I know Joe's gonna watch this video because he seems to go through a lot of them and comment regularly on my content here. If you can really do that, I want to see it. Really, I want to see it. I'd almost become your client probably if you were actually able to do that and teach it and not be a street harasser. That's a big if. So instead of being a matchmaker, that's obviously your calling. Clearly, if you're that successful with it. And then the obvious question arises, who can successfully seduce 18-year-old models who are going to be probably on the equivalent of Ukraine's next top model, and then decides to get married to a woman who's a single mom in her 30s? Who does that and wants to create some sort of blended family? That's why I'm incredulous. But anyways, so let's move on to some more delusional comments from Ukrainian bride business.
And who live there, who speak the language. I mean, he sort of speaks, but okay, he's not, he's not fluent. And if he thinks he is, please talk to my wife, and my wife will be the judge, okay? Because I think, anyway.
So just a quick aside comment. I don't know why he decided to attack me on all things about my language skills. Former president of the International Polyglot Society. I speak over 10 languages. Polyglot is just a more esoteric word for someone who speaks lots of languages. But why Joe doesn't speak, or has never spoken from what I can see on camera, and I've actually met him once in person. It was a good few years ago, and he didn't speak any Russian or Ukrainian, or I don't even think he speaks French, and he's Canadian. Why is he questioning my ability to speak Ukrainian and Russian? And why does he want me to call his wife now? The guy's being, again, delusional if he thinks I don't speak Russian and Ukrainian when I speak in my videos in Russian and Ukrainian. Добре, Анжела. Ми де? Ми в Одесі, так?
Так.
На Аркаді. Що ж ситуація тут зараз? I don't know what other language have I spoken there in Romanian.
When we arrived in Bucharest, obviously the first language that we spoke was Romanian.
Da.
How was that?
Foarte bine. O limba română este o limba oficială în România. Avem vorbit românești în România, în București și Galați. И потом мы говорили по-русски в Кишиневе, Tiraspol и здесь в Одессе.
Also, I spoke in Belarusian in one. I spoke in French in the videos, Italian, Spanish.
Met a guy that was reading a French newspaper or a French book.
Bon, oui, j'ai commencé à parler en français avec lui. Il était étudiant de français à l'Alliance française a Chisinau. Sì, perché oggi tanti parlano italiano, anche spagnolo. Due delle ragazze hanno studiato a Bologna, dove anch'io ho studiato, quindi abbiamo chiacchierato un po' in italiano.
I think I have videos where I speak in Portuguese from way years back.
Sim, fomos no bar e lá falamos com alguns jogadores brasileiros e eles jogam pela equipe de Galatas. Então foi maravilhoso falar em português com eles.
Yeah, I don't know why you bring this up. I mean, this is something that's very important for if you come to the region or you want to increase your chances with dating, is that if you do speak the local language, it is a big advantage. And I actually underplayed this in the past, but it's become clear to me the more and more with clients, whether it's in Poland or it's here in Ukraine in the past, fortunately not bringing them at the moment for the in-person experience, but hopefully soon again, is that if you speak the local language, you have a lot more credibility. You're able to make that connection with the local people, including the local lovely ladies, and it is a big advantage. It's not a sine qua non, it's not to say that if you don't speak Ukrainian or Russian, that you can't date and marry someone from Ukraine, since we're focusing on Ukraine here. And it's always been great for screening out the potential scammers and the scammer girls, because if they hear you speak the local language, they know you're not fresh off the boat, so to say, and they know that you're probably going to catch on to their scam and they're just going to exit stage left straight away. I've never personally had that issue, and I believe I've met a few scammers who were planning to scam me on a date, and when they heard that I could speak the local language, like here in Ukraine, it is now more or less Ukrainian everywhere. It's going to be the main language. If you're planning to actually come and spend time in Ukraine, then Ukrainian is a better language to learn in 2023, going into 2024 for sure. But it actually is a great defense against it, because they don't go for the guys who can speak the local language. I've never seen it happen. So yeah, strange that he would pick on that, which is basically one of his Achilles heels. He never learned good Russian or Ukrainian when he lived in Ukraine. So not really sure why he decided to attack me on that point. Again, bit delusional from what I can see. Добре, Анжела, ми в Одесі, так?
Так.
На Аркаді. Що ж ситуація тут зараз? Думаю, що є більш хлопців, ніж дівчат зараз, або ні?
Ну, я думаю, що на даний момент хлопців в Одесі більше, ніж дівчат.
Так, і більш ніж рік тому, але як рік тому?
Ну, я думаю, що дівчат на даний момент в цьому році більше, чим, к прикладу, рік тому. І надіємося, що в майбутньому їх буде ще більше,
Так.
що вони будуть повертатися додому.
Розумію. І твої подруги, які працюють модели, де вони? Вони тут?
Ну,
або в Євросоюзі?
Якщо в дівчат є можливість працювати десь в Євросоюзі, в модельній сфері, або щось приблизно в цій сфері, то, звичайно, вони виїхали і працюють. Ну, з періодичністю вони завжди повертаються назад додому.
І є різниця між дівчиною, які у них хлопець тут в Одесі, або вони, які без хлопців?
Ну, звичайно, у тих дівчат, у яких є чоловіки або хлопці, то вони, звичайно, можуть залишатися тут в Одесі або в Україні.
Так,
Так, тому що у них немає можливості виїхати, і вони не хочуть залишати свою другу половину.
Так, це нормально. Добре, окей. So after my last reaction video to the Ukrainian bride business, one of the big points that came up, and another matchmaker wrote to me about it, was the ratio between single men and single women of, we'll say, reproductive age here in Ukraine with the Russo-Ukrainian war. Men, in theory, find it very hard to leave the country since the extended invasion by Russia on February 24th, 2022. Actually, the restrictions came in on men leaving on the 25th, the day after, and a lot of women left. It was mainly women, children, and older people who were able to leave and did leave Ukraine in the immediate aftermath of the invasion. Now, a lot of them have come back, but my contention is there's a clear disparity between the number of single men and single women, and there are more single men than women considerably in Ukraine as of now. It's not as extreme as it was in terms of an imbalance, we'll say in 2022 after the invasion, but it is noticeable. And Ukrainian Bride Business, whether it's Joe or it's someone else, they seem to be claiming that there are way more women here than men, and that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So I had a discussion with another matchmaker in the comments. So Joe isn't actually the only matchmaker left standing, it seems. There is one or two still there. And this is from Agence de Rencontre, CQMI. Not that Joe will really understand that, probably, but it is from Antoine, I believe his name is, and he is based in Quebec as well, so another Canadian. And I'll just run you through a little bit of the points that we had in the discussion. I think it's interesting because it did make me go and actually look for a little bit more statistical evidence. So in my home country, Ireland, for example, there are around 100,000 Ukrainians who've come since February 2022, and 46% are women over the age of 20, but only 22% are men over the age of 20. So there you can see it's like 2 to 1 in terms of women to men who have gone to Ireland. And Ireland per capita has quite a lot for Western Europe in terms of Ukrainians who have gone there. Ireland is a country of, I guess, around 5 million, and we have 100,000. So it's quite considerable. Not as big a percentage as you're going to see in Poland or in the Baltics. And I think in Czechia as well, it's a bit higher. But it's quite big. So if you extrapolate that out, then you can see that a lot more women over the age of 20, probably 2 to 1, than men have gone since February 22. And it makes sense. I mean, men, they need special permission to leave. So, of course, it's going to be harder for them to leave. And yeah, that is reducing, I think, but there's still a bit of an imbalance. Yeah, my other point was that, just in my own personal experience, that I know very few single women who came back under the age of 30, from, we'll say, 18 to 30 years of age, to cities like here in Odessa, to Kyiv, or to Kharkiv. Predominantly women who have a husband here or a boyfriend who came back. Again, makes more sense if the guys are finding it hard to leave, that they come back to join them after a certain point, if they're living in a city that is not in immediate danger of being occupied by the Russian forces. And then Antoine, his contention was that, let's see, that very few Ukrainian women are really capable of starting a new life, starting from zero without a man, in a Western country, living in a dormitory in a country that they don't know without any future perspectives. Joe says, that's referring to Much Guarantee, on one of his live streams, that 3 out of 4 of the women come back to Ukraine, and that also corresponds with what Antoine sees. Svetlana of Dioli says the same thing. Dioli, that's a blast from the past. So I'm also surprised they're still going. Anyways, on the opposite, the Ukrainian men have motivation to leave Ukraine because of mobilization to the front. The Ukrainian men are trying to get out by any means necessary, and this is covered up by the Western media. While there isn't really any evidence of that. As you can see from the Irish statistics, it's 2 to 1 women to men, so that just doesn't add up at all. I'm sure there's some men trying to leave to go work in the European Union, and now there is talk of a mobilization here of 500,000 men by the Ukrainians. So maybe that will change going forward, but that hasn't been the case up until now whatsoever. And what's very interesting, they're saying that 3 out of 4 of the women, but who are these women? These are the women that go to their matchmakers, right? Matchmaking agencies. So it's women that, first of all, they're open to leaving Ukraine and going to basically North America. That's where, from what I understand, most of the male clients are from. And in general, I'm pretty sure Joe and Antoine have also quoted the statistic that only 15% of Ukrainian women are actually open to the idea of dating a foreigner and moving, right? So you're talking about 15% of the population, plus they have to be willing to go to North America, which is far away. So yeah, we're talking about a subset of that 15%. And how many women legitimately even go to these marriage agencies? Is it a couple of thousand out of the millions of women in Ukraine? So we're talking about a very, very small subset of Ukrainian society that are open to that. And let's be frank about it. If the premise is that they're looking to move, they're looking to immigrate to the US, to America, or maybe to Canada. So again, when they could have gotten anyways up until pretty recently, a free visa for Canada and just emigrate. In US, it was the easiest ever to emigrate. So if it's women that move somewhere in the European Union and weren't happy there, then yeah, that tells you what their motivation is. Their motivation is to immigrate to North America. That's the main motivation. That's got to be a very small subset of Ukrainian women. So that's not representative whatsoever of the general situation and what happens, like if you were to come here to Ukraine and socialize or, presumably help Ukraine in some way, either in terms of the humanitarian effort or maybe the war effort. And I do meet guys here who are doing that quite a bit here in Odessa. And the ratio is definitely not more women who are single than men at the moment. That may change going forward. Of course, there might be new reality in 6 months. We'll have to wait and see. But right at the moment, whilst the imbalance is correcting itself, it's definitely not that there are lots of, there's a complete dearth of single marriageable men here in Ukraine whatsoever compared to the number of women. It still favors the women in terms of having more men to choose from. And you got to think about, these are the women that they're citing that are looking basically to emigrate. This is like green card central, green card girl central. That's what they are. They're the women whose main priority, because they lived presumably in the European Union, and their value, if you look at my video about what's 9 and 10, the one I quoted at the beginning, well, when they go further to the West in Europe, their value on the dating market increases 1 point, 2 points, maybe on up to 3 points, because on average, Ukrainian women are better looking than women in Western Europe. So if they were already over there and they were open to marrying a foreigner and they had higher value than they had here, with a few exceptions. I know I did that other video with Yelena, the matchmaker, and she said some of them were in small villages in Germany, and okay, they didn't have great options in that small village. But if they've given up on living in the European Union and they couldn't meet anyone there, even when they had that advantage, again, sounds to me pretty much like a green card girl. She wants to go to America or to Canada, and then the issue is going to be not in the beginning, but after she gets her residence or her citizenship in Canada or the US, are you, the sponsor of this immigration, going to be surplus to requirements? And the anecdotal evidence is, because there was a Canadian guy who was one of my clients before, and he told me that back in the day, he'd been married to a Russian woman, lived in Canada, used to hang out with a group of Canadian men married to women from Ukraine, from Russia, from other parts of this region. And they hadn't all met their wives through matchmakers. They had met them through maybe traveling here and, just different ways, right? So it was also a bit organic, plus the matchmaking route. And he said that after the woman got residency and or citizenship, 80% of the marriages failed, including his own. So, yeah, and I also already told that other anecdote about one of my other clients who came here with a friend, who was an investment banker, very wealthy, but quite overweight and out of shape. And he had come 3 times previously and got married 3 times previously to women he met at matchmakers, 2 Ukrainians and 1 Russian. He's back here for a 4th time, and he didn't actually meet anyone on the 4th trip and ended up marrying an Asian immigrant to the US, and they're still together, and she was actually a single mom. So yeah, that was clearly the better option for him, but he quipped that the best sex is the sex 3 months before the woman gets her green card. So just think about it. She invested so much, that's the prize, the residency, that green card, and that is a big motivation. So really, caveat emptor, let the buyer beware, as they say. So you've been warned. So circling back to a point about delusion or just being out of touch, from what I understand, none of these matchmakers that I'm aware of are actually here in Ukraine for the last 2 years. Maybe they're not being deliberately misleading. Maybe they just don't understand the situation here because these matchmakers don't live in Ukraine. They haven't been here, from what I understand, any of them for the last 2 years. And a lot of things have changed. And they're probably just thinking of a Ukraine of times gone by. This war, the Russo-Ukrainian war with the extended invasion in 2022 has caused massive upheaval and has changed the dynamics in the dating market considerably. And it will continue to evolve quite rapidly and change quite a bit. So you really need to be here on the ground. There's nobody talking from Canada and saying, oh, we have friends there. And listen, you have to be here on the ground and understand it and actually be out and about and socialize and speak to lots of people and actually see it for yourself to really understand. That's why I'm known as the insider for this region, because I am still here in spite of the war. We had regular Russian rocket attacks, especially during the summer here was pretty awful. But I'm here on the ground so I can give you a better idea. And if you are looking to get the real insights of what's happening here in Ukraine, whether it's about dating or it's just about the situation in general, then down below in the description is a link to my consulting, and we can jump on a call together and I can provide you with the expertise from here on the ground in Ukraine. So as an addendum to this video, Joe actually drew my attention to the fact that there's another matchmaker, a Farron Affair, that I guess are famous or infamous, depending on your point of view. And they have some incredible things on their website that, for me, look completely delusional when I look at the situation here on the ground in Ukraine. So they have listed cities where they have a club. Men have the opportunity to meet women in such cities as St. Petersburg, obviously in Russia. Interesting that they are promoting that. Kyiv, Kherson. It's dangerous to go to Kherson and it gets shelled regularly by Russian artillery. Odessa here, Mykolaiv, Dnipro, Kharkiv. And why are they spelling everything with Russian transliteration? So like they expect all these cities to be eventually occupied and annexed into the Russian Empire. Vinnytsia, Poltava, Sumy. Sumy is also probably pretty dodgy to go to. Zaporizhia also gets attacked regularly. Kryvyi Rih, Mariupol. How can they have Mariupol in this? What are they doing? Helping Americans and Canadians and go to Mariupol? Mariupol is like, I can't imagine that any potential wife hunter, when a matchmaker is going to be allowed into Mariupol by the Russian authorities that occupy it. Like, you'd have to get a Russian visa, go around, to be illegal entry into Ukraine, and I can't imagine the Russian authorities are going to believe that you're really wife hunting in Mariupol as an American. They'd probably arrest you and charge you with espionage, and that ain't very believable. So I don't know how Mariupol can be there. If it's a city of 500,000 people pre-war in terms of population. I've been there. I was actually filming a vlog there before the invasion.
Let's see what the city has to offer and take a walk around. I see it's got obviously the legacy of its history.
City center got completely wrecked. I mean, so much of the city is destroyed. So many people were killed. It's like, I don't know how they can have this on their website. And then Sevastopol, or Sevastopol as we say in English, which is occupied since 2014 in Crimea. So yeah, just very odd. Like, it's delusional. What Americans are going wife hunting in Sevastopol? Like, what Americans are going to St. Petersburg? Even at the moment, you know, several Americans being detained and charged with various things. So, and then exchanged afterwards. I'm not sure who really wants to go and risk that at the moment. But yeah, this is like unbelievable to see. Again, I'm a bit incredulous about it. But you know, as I predicted many times before in these videos, eventually they're going to do the switcheroo and you're going to see Russian brides in the place where Ukrainian brides, where it's a legacy brand. It's a legacy brand, maybe, the Ukrainian brides, because they've sunk so much money over the years in building up this image, this myth of the Ukrainian Stepford wife who's traditional and open to a huge age gap and beautiful. I agree with the beautiful thing on average, but yeah, traditional, obviously, I'm a huge skeptic of that. And I see they have other cities below in other parts of the world, like Bangkok in Thailand, some places in China, Philippines, Mexico, Costa Rica. Yeah, these all seem more realistic, especially the Philippines, as I've said. Like if you're over, over 50, out of shape, from somewhere not very sexy as not a New York or an LA in the US, somewhere a little bit more run of the mill, then yeah, maybe if you go to the Philippines to a small island, there are other YouTubers who show that they're, no Brad Pitt, out of, overweight and definitely over 40 at least. And yeah, they marry with a big age gap on an island in the Philippines. So yeah, I can see that working. Just delusional to think that they're going to be going to Kherson and meeting up with women to have dates. That just seems insane, considering the level of risk. And yeah, I looked through it. It seemed like they organized some sort of tour recently in September, November. It says Kiev, Kharkiv. They have Kiev here in November. What's the value for these guys coming to Kiev? It's such a huge expedition to help someone immigrate to the US at the end of the day. Potential green card girls. I mean, they can all live in the European Union. Why, do you have this small percentage that will want to meet them? You can meet so many Ukrainian women if you go to the places. I'll put up the graphic where they've gone per capita. Like if you go to Poland, obviously to the Baltic states, Czechia, also in Germany, there's a huge number. Ireland. In fact, I think half these guys should probably be going to Ireland trying to find a wife in the first place, since arguably Ireland is more traditional almost, than especially lower divorce rate compared to Ukraine. Yeah, you'd also be able to meet a lot of Ukrainians if you went there without risking being hit in a rocket or a drone strike. It just seems pretty delusional to be coming over here when there's more single men than women, and the women who want to leave can leave. Of course, apparently you have a small percentage that really want to immigrate to America, and they, need a guy in order to do that. They prefer to have a guy, but as I said, what are the chances of it working in the long run? Especially when you see the photos of the lovely ladies on their website. Sure, those women really, really are hanging out in Kiev waiting to be saved by the typical wife hunter who uses this kind of service. There was a documentary a few years ago. I'll put a clip up showing you what kind of guys, had the big socials. I'm not sure if this was to organize a social where you have 7 women to every man, and these guys don't look like they could probably get many dates back home. So complete overkill. Yeah, just seems completely delusional to be setting this up with Ukraine, especially using Russian transliteration in 2020. We're almost into 2024. Like even in 2020, a lot of those spellings were like pretty rare to see anymore. So I don't know what decade these people are living in, but not in sync with the current reality of Ukraine, in my opinion. And yeah, the Latin tours, yeah, probably makes a lot more sense, and definitely the Asian ones to like Thailand and Philippines. But yeah, that's what I saw. They even have it here. I'm looking at the website. 7-to-1 male to female, female to male ratio. That's kind of what their dream is for the country, but it's not that way, for sure. So, yeah, I'm gobsmacked that they'd have the audacity to keep this up. Completely delusional, in my opinion. So as you can see here, this is kind of the reality of Ukraine in December 2023 when I'm filming this. Actually pretty quiet on the Sunday afternoon. Got the Christmas tree, you can probably see it right down the end there, that's been put up because it is the season to be jolly, even in Ukraine during this difficult period. And also I've been talking to other foreigners who are here in Odessa in Ukraine, and these guys are not wife hunters. They actually have a reason to be here in Ukraine. A lot of them are helping with the country's effort to resist Russian aggression, where that happens to be humanitarian aid workers or guys who are actually in the military or helping the military in some capacity, Ukrainian military. And I asked them what is life like here, and in particular, what is their dating life like. And some of the things that come up, they all agree that there are more single men than single women in general in Ukraine right at the moment. But they do tell me that the foreigner factor, that is the reaction to them being normally from North America, or most of the guys I've met, a few Brits as well, is quite positive, and more positive than it would have been before the extended invasion of Ukraine that occurred in February 2022. So that is one plus to being here on the ground here in Ukraine. And unfortunately, because of this war, or the extended invasion of 2022, I have not been bringing clients with me in person to Ukraine. But I was up in Lviv recently, this last week actually, and I met up with a client there who did come and lived an in-person experience with me back in 2021 in Kharkiv, and he is now married to a Ukrainian from Zaporizhia, so met up with them. It's quite nice to see them again, and he is now considering splitting his time between the US, Mexico, and Kyiv. So we were discussing him getting residency in Ukraine, also buying property up in Kyiv. Yes, in December 2023, we were having those discussions. So I think going forward into 2024, it is foreseeable that we'll be bringing clients back here to Ukraine. These kind of clients who are looking for residency and to buy property in particular. Clearly, I will not be bringing clients, as I have not done for many years now, to Belarus or to Russia. But in the meantime, I understand that coming here in person to Ukraine at a time of war is not for everybody, especially if you're relocating from, at least 3 months to maybe you're going to live here in this region full-time in New Europe, as I'm dubbing it. I have a video about what New Europe is. Haven't seen it, it's up above in the card down below in the description. So for the last 18 months, I've been bringing my clients to alternatives in this region, and some of those are Riga in Latvia. It's obviously got a high standard of living relative. It's been part of the European Union since 2004. So we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of not just Latvia's accession to the European Union, but also countries like Poland, Lithuania, Estonia, and lots of parts of Central Europe as well. They joined at the same time. So, the level of infrastructure is quite high in a place like Riga. It has now a big international airport in the capital, so it's actually becoming a bit of a regional hub for the Baltics in terms of air travel. And it is the land of the leggy blonde in Latvia. You have some of the tallest people in the world and some of the blondest people in the world. So if leggy blondes are your thing, then that is possibly a good alternative, a good option to go. Had some fun evenings out in Riga. Been up there, I think it's about 4 times so far in the last year or so. So definitely I can recommend that. Traveling further south, we come to Warsaw, which is the city I'm dubbing the capital of New Europe. They're actually building currently Rail Baltica, which will link Warsaw through the 3 Baltic states. So going through Vilnius and Kaunas up to Riga and on to Tallinn in Estonia, and eventually they're going to build a tunnel under the sea to Helsinki. That is the current plan, so pretty impressive. And Poland has been booming economically for many, many years. They didn't even have an economic downturn in 2008, really. So it's just been almost 2 decades of economic growth there. So again, infrastructure quite high. So for guys who don't want to give up maybe the amenities and conveniences of, say, living in a city like New York, maybe that's going to be easier to get in a place like Warsaw. On the dating side, of course, you have enormous diasporas from both Ukraine and from neighboring Belarus. The beautiful Belarusians and the cute Ukrainians are there en masse. I would say that possibly it is as high as 25-30% in the city center are from both Ukraine and Belarus. When you walk around, it is pretty amazing to see such big thriving communities, and there are lots of cool places to hang out in that target those 2 diasporas. Normally when you have newly arrived immigrants, they tend to congregate in maybe slightly poorer parts of the cities, and it takes them, a few years to build up and start to have the nice places in the nicer neighborhoods. That's not, from what I can see, the case in the center of Warsaw. A lot of the best places, in my opinion, in the city are run by Ukrainians and Belarusians. So those two diasporas are actually what I've been focusing on with clients. You also, of course, have the pretty Poles in Warsaw. They are the vast majority of the city. But what I've been finding is that we kind of get a better reaction when going to the diaspora. Cocktail bars, restaurants, cafes, shisha lounges, clubs, than is the average reaction if you go to the Polish parts, are the parts that most people are going to be Polish in. It's not exclusively that way, but that's just what I've seen with many clients. And my clients, a lot of them maybe speak Russian or Ukrainian, or have lived or spent time in Ukraine in particular. So they obviously have a bit more of a connection with the Ukrainians because of that. Plus, people who come from a new country, start a new life, they tend to not have fixed social circles or a routine even. So they just tend to be more open to new people in general, as opposed to maybe people who've grown up their whole life in Warsaw, already have established social circle from high school and they don't really change it so much, or they're at university and they build one there in the city. And then obviously they already have those things and they're a little bit less open to meeting foreigners, I would say, on the whole. To be blunt about it, I have not seen a foreigner who does not speak Polish dating anything over a 4 out of 10 in Warsaw. That's pretty striking. Now, one of my clients actually sent me the profile of a guy who looks like a male model, and he's actually Asian American, like my client is. And he said, look, this guy, and he lives, I should say, in the most prestigious building in Warsaw, probably in all of New Europe. And he has a local social circle. He's been there for many, many years. He said, look, this guy can date pretty girls in Warsaw. I said, yeah, but he's there for 7 years. He looks like a male model. And fair play to him for working himself to get to that level. He's rich as well. So he has all those other things in place. But for guys who just come in, like the digital nomad crowd, it's going to be really, really hard to date anything over a 4. From what I see, it's just what I see. Unless you speak Polish, and that does tend to be a game changer. On top of that, I have seen foreigners with better looking Ukrainians and Belarusians, in particular Ukrainians. So I would say that, yeah, maybe in 6 or 7, you would see a foreigner with, very occasionally. It's not very common to even see that. So with your insider here, because that's what I'm known as in this region, we will go out and we will focus on several things. Focus on your social circle, building up your social media, and having an absolutely amazing time, whichever city it happens to be that we go to together. Because you don't want to end up Billy Nomads in this place, or hanging out with a low-value social circle. And I think hanging out with digital nomads, they're kind of drifters. That's the reputation. That's the way it's perceived. Now, they might be great people in reality, but just my experience with talking to girls in this region, they find it a bit odd, and they find that the guys haven't really got ties to anywhere, and they're just moving from place to place every few months where it's cheap. And so they kind of get a bit of a drifter label if you're like that. Now, of course, if you already speak local language, it can help you get out of that box, but most digital nomads don't invest in that. Something I encourage my clients to do. But if you come with the insider, you're not going to be going to a general admission club to socialize in on your own as Billy Nomads or with a low-value social circle. You're going to come with me. We're going to hit up the best places, in particular the places that are frequented by those diasporas in Warsaw, if we go to Warsaw together. And you're not going to have to queue to get in. You're going to have a table at the best spot, and we're just going to paint the town red and have an amazing time, help you build your social circle of cities. Check out if that city is for you, because there are alternatives, like I bring my clients to Chisinau, crazy Chisinau, the capital of Mad Moldova, just up the road from here, and probably the closest culturally that you're going to find outside of Ukraine to Ukraine. Smaller city, doesn't have the seaside like here in Odessa, but it has pretty good nightlife and social scene, I have to say, overall. And in particular, if you spend a good amount of time in Chisinau, you will build up a pretty good social circle, in particular if you can speak the local languages. If you don't, it might be a bit more of an effort. But we've had a fantastic time both in the winter and in the summer in Chisinau, because nightlife tends to be a bit different. And I think in terms of level of beauty, Moldova is pretty similar to here. I think, obviously it's a mixture in terms of the ethnicities that live in Moldova. So it's kind of in between Ukraine and Romania, is the way I describe it. But definitely it does not disappoint as an experience. Chisinau, the capital of Moldova. And the final place I've been bringing my clients is Almaty the Almighty, just off the steppes of Central Asia, in the very, very, very far east of Europe. Yes, Kazakhstan does have a little bit of its territory in geographical Europe. It tries to join most European organizations that let it in. For example, if you watch association football or soccer, as is known in the States, it's actually no more soccer also in Ireland, where I grew up, then you will see that Kazakhstan actually plays in the European side of the draw when they need to qualify for the World Cup, or they play in the European Championship. So that's why you'll see them in competitive matches for the qualifying with countries like Ireland or Moldova or Germany, because yes, a small amount is in Europe. And the population-wise, it's probably about 15% of European descent, 85% of Asian descent. That's just a guesstimate. Officially in the stats, it actually says a bit higher European, but that's not really what I observed or my clients observed when we went there. So I'd say that's the mix, about 15% European and 85% Asian. And they are super friendly and welcoming, the Kazakhstanis. And Almaty itself, the city, the former capital of Kazakhstan, the current capital is Astana, further in the north, also a cool city. Went there for a week back in 2022. Almaty, city of 2 to 3 million people, great infrastructure there and options for restaurants, shisha lounges, cafes, bars, clubs. It's actually pretty good standard city for 2 to 3 million people with phenomenal nature nearby. It has beautiful mountains, lakes, and canyons just outside the city. And in this time of year, you can also go skiing. It's probably about half an hour, more or less, up to the slopes just outside the city of Almaty. So also get out as an option, and plan to go back there in the new year with a client. And of course, we will put on our skis and hit those slopes when we're there. So that is the other option. If you are interested in living the in-person experience with me, contact line down below is an application form. It is by application only. Not everybody who applies can join. It has to be a good fit for you and for me to work together. Before you go and take your shot, in the words of Wayne Gretzky, famous Canuck ice hockey player, Joe should know who that is, since he is a legend in Canada, a man of Belarusian, Ukrainian, and Polish origins. He famously said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, but before you take your shot, go and check out some playlists that I put together for you to help you understand what the in-person experience will be about. First of all, got a playlist up on a card about the cities that I bring my clients to. Got some vlogs there from the current cities and also from some cities from back in the day. Give you a nice taste of the flavor of the in-person experience. Second of all, we have my playlist with what I would describe as a series of tutorials about dating the uber beautiful from New Europe, from this region. Go and check that out. That's the second playlist, so you get an idea about the mentality. And if you really want to dive deep into the mindset of this region, then I have my Vodka Vodcast series linked as a playlist. So go check that out. It's over 50 hours, at least 50 hours of content there from over the years, where I go really in long format. Normally those vodcasts are around half an hour, some of them longer, some of them a little bit shorter. And there I dive deep, as I said, into the mindset in this region. So there are a lot of videos there, so definitely scroll through them, pick out the ones that catch your attention, and that will help you a lot with learning about this region. So on this chilly, but not super cold December evening, getting ready for Christmas season, I bid you a do pobачення, do перемоги, slava Ukraini, and Rom Slava from Odessa, Mama, on the shores of the Black Sea in southern Ukraine. See you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.
SAR Experience.